it gonna do?
Better. Stronger.
Son of a bitch.
Faster.
Oh, yeah!
So another great controversial topic that I like to talk about is I'm stuck in the middle, you know? And I actually say this in Bigger, Stronger, Faster. You know, I'm the middle brother of two guys that were both abusing steroids and using them very heavily. My older brother, Mad Dog, was using steroids to be a pro wrestler. My younger brother, Smelly, was also trying to be a pro wrestler, but he was also trying to be one of the strongest people in the world, and he decided to take a plunge to the dark side and use anabolic steroids. That being said, when I was on the phone with my producers early on in the process of making Bigger, Stronger, Faster, I remember I was on the phone with them one day, and I said, well, look, for me, this is like a personal issue because I have an older brother that's taking him for wrestling. I have a younger brother taking him for powerlifting. I'm stuck in the middle, not taking him, but I'm also not as strong and not as in shape as I want to be. I don't look like my brothers. They're both like these huge guys, and I want to be like them, and I'm not sure if it's good to have a clean conscience and a good bill of health, or would I be better off taking them? You know, if I'm in better shape, would my health also be better? I'd be less weight, I'd be leaner, you know, have more lean body mass, these type of things. And that was like a real issue at the core of Bigger, Stronger, Faster. And I think everybody confuses me with a guy that's used a bunch of steroids, but that's not necessarily the case. I have definitely messed around with steroids, and I should tell you the only time I've ever gotten hurt taking steroids was when I was experimenting with trenbolone, which I do not recommend for anybody for any real purpose. I know a lot of people are going to use it anyway. It's one of the stronger steroids, but it also has a lot of severe side effects. Like, as a matter of fact, I got way too strong, and you might think that that's impossible, but I basically could bench 455 raw any day of the week. Walk in the gym, boom, put it up without a spotter. And then I would do things like that were stupid because I was strong, like 125-pound dumbbell tricep extensions. And that's exactly how I tore my tricep. And if you don't believe me, my buddy Rico McClinton was there. My buddy Justin Lovato was right there. They saw it happen. They were like, was that your tricep? Because it made a big thud when it ripped off the bone. And I haven't been the same since. I haven't been able to lift the same sense. And I'm always stuck in the middle of this because I'm around people that claim to be natural, right? And it's the worst offenders of them all. We have Mike O'Hearn, who ever since I've known him has claimed that he's natural. We have the Liver King, who I haven't known that long, but I have met in person and spent some time with him, that claims he's natural, and a lot of people dispute that. They even think he might have fake abs, ab implants, because his abs are so etched. And then we also have the infamous John Cena, who ever since we knew him has claimed he's natural. So you have Mike O'Hearn, Liver King, John Cena. Are they all lying to me? I mean, these are, besides Liver King, Cena and Mike O'Hearn, you couldn't get any closer to. You couldn't be better friends with these people at the time. So with Mike O'Hearn, I have to say I met him in 1993 at Gold's Gym in Venice. And the very first thing he did was ask me if I wanted to work out with them. You know, now he did make me change all the plates and take off all the 45s and load up the plates when they were squatting and deadlifting and things like that. But I felt like almost like an apprentice to Mike O'Hearn. And I was about 22 years old, maybe 21. And Mike, I think, is a couple years older than me. He was maybe like 25 or 26, but he was at the top of the fitness industry. He was already killing it. He had already been on a ton of different magazine covers. He was killing it. He was Joe Weider's guy. I remember going to the Arnold, and I got a job in fitness really, really early. There was a show called American Muscle Magazine, and it was on ESPN. And for whatever weird reason, the guy who runs that saw a video that I had done that got me into USC film school. And he said, wow, this guy's really talented. I wonder if he's into bodybuilding. I just wonder, right? So he calls me and I'm like, am I into bodybuilding? I'm like, I'm a meathead. I love this. I train at Gold's Venice. And so it just seemed like a natural thing to take this job and work at ESPN. So I remember I traveled to the Arnold in 1995, And O'Hearn was there, and he was walking around. It was the first glimpse of fame that I ever got. The first glimpse I ever got of like, oh my God, people know who this guy is, and he's my friend. That's really cool. And what was like really weird to me was at the time there was a lot of people stirring the pot talking about whether or not he's actually natural. And at the time, I barely knew what steroids even were. So to know if somebody's natural or not to me was crazy. Like I knew what they were because my older brother had taken them, but it was always so taboo. And in Gold's Gym in Venice, even around guys like Craig Titus, Paul Dillett, like all these giant bodybuilders, it's just something that you wouldn't bring up. Like I'm not going to go up to Flex Wheeler and be like, hey, bro, what are you on? Like it was unspoken. Nobody talked about it. We didn't know anything about it. So I had asked Mike a couple times, and he'd be like, yeah, I'm natural. I did all these Mr. Universe shows. I've, beat all the tests for those and blah, blah, blah. Years go by, and this is before the internet, right? Like way before the internet was a big deal. And years go by, and stories kind of tend to change usually. But like Mike's story, besides a couple things, actually, which is really interesting, he would say that he was like a black belt in judo or whatever, right? And then it would come out like, oh, he's not really a black belt in judo, but he does have some experience in it because of the internet, right? So a lot of these things have been debunked or unpacked. Like some of the things that he said might have not been completely true when he said them. And I love Mike. He's one of my really good friends. I have a ton of respect for him. But he had told me some things that turned out not to be true. Now, also, Mike is known as the biggest troll in the world. And, he told me stuff like he used to be in a log rolling champion. And I think he was just trolling me because he's a jokester. So he's like, oh, no, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. And, when you get on a log and you wear those cleats and you turn the log. He told me he was a champion at that. So now looking back on it, I go, he was probably just trolling me. But I could swear to God, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I have done a lot of drugs in my life. I could also swear that he told me he played football for the Washington Huskies. And then when the internet came out, I went and looked that up, and that just didn't happen, And like I said, who knows? My memory might be flawed, but I'm pretty sure that he has told me things like that. However, his stance on steroids was that he never took them. He doesn't need them. And if you saw the recent video he did with Kenny KO, he was kind of like burning Kenny KO, saying like, look, you use them, and I'm way bigger than you. He's kind of like using all this reverse psychology on him. So do I know whether or not Mike ever took steroids? As close as I am to him and as good of friends I've been with him, no. Like, in all honesty, if you really want to look at it from a standpoint of like what I've investigated and what I've found, I've looked into it a lot. I've asked that question a lot, but I've never seen him tear a muscle. I've never seen him get hurt. He's in his 50s. I've never seen like acne all over his back. I've never seen the telltale signs of steroid use. And he did pass a lot of tests back in the day for these natural federations. However, the top federation at the time, when I used to work for that American Muscle magazine, there was a show called Muscle Mania. And Muscle Mania, the year that I was involved in it, Danny Hester won, and he was the top natural bodybuilder in the world. And I went to Danny, I said, hey, how was the test for that? Was it easy to pass the test? He's like, I never got tested. And I was on a ton of shit. And so he flat out told me, and Danny Hester was also the first ever classic Mr. Olympia before Chris Bumstead was. Danny Hester had a phenomenal physique. He worked harder than anybody I know, but he was just always jacked and shredded and looked amazing. And he was the Muscle Mania natural champion, and he was taking stuff. So could we be getting got by some of these guys? I think we can. Is Mike one of those guys? I just don't know. It's really hard to look at somebody that dedicates that much of their life to it. Like, I know when I dedicate my life to fitness, I get in really good shape. But I've also not been able to string together even a week of not being in pain. So what if I wasn't in pain? What if I could do as much work as Mike O'Hearn? Or what if I could do even as much work as my brother? I watch how hard Mark works all the time. And obviously Mark is on a TRT dose of testosterone now, but I've also seen Mark natural be a freak. Like, I saw Mark at 20 years old, and he was jacked and ripped, And we can pull up a picture and post that as well of when he was 20 years old. He was in Bill Phillips' a Body for Life competition where he was trying to win a Lamborghini. And in my opinion, Smelly got further than most of the people in the contest and looked better than most of the people in the contest. But it almost looked like he was on steroids, and I think that's why they didn't pick him, and he wasn't like a finalist in that competition because he obviously put on a lot of muscle in the time period and lost a lot of body fat. And the way that Mark did that was he was working so hard that every day for 3 months his diet consisted of a designer whey protein shake. It was the only whey on the market at the time. Dan Duchesne was the guy who formulated it, the old steroid guru. So designer whey protein with flaxseed oil. And that would be, he'd have that like 2 or 3 meals a day. And then he was eating salmon also at the time. So I'd have like 1 piece of salmon a day and living off of 3 protein shakes. He got insanely ripped. I don't recommend that to anybody. The micronutrient profile on that isn't that great, and we need more vitamins and minerals in our diet than doing that, but it will get you shredded. So I know how far Smelly could take it naturally. I also have a really good friend named Tito Raymond. Tito Raymond told me he was natural. I couldn't believe it because the guy just looks too damn good. He walked up to me at Sharky's, a bar that we used to work at, and also, ironically, John Cena worked at Sharky's with us also. And Tito Raymond showed me his bicep one day, and it just had that Arnold bubble, like that baseball in there. And I'm like, I'm never going to look like that no matter what I take or what I do. So Tito was like, yeah, I'm all natural. And I'd be like, well, this guy's such a liar. There's no way he's natural. Steroids are definitely the answer for him. Well, and then Tito Raymond said, hey, I'd like you to meet my brother Jose, who's about 3 inches shorter than Tito. Tito's my height, so his brother's like 5'3" or 5'4", just jacked to the gills, right? And his brother looks just like him. They're very similar built. Well, a couple of years later, Jose decides to go over to the dark side, and he becomes a 212 bodybuilding champion. He competes against Flex Lewis every year for like 10 years and comes in second to the great Flex Lewis every single time. Some of the years it's argued that he could have beat Flex Lewis, but he never did. But it shows me that when a guy goes from being, Jose Raymond was 5'4", 140, 150 pounds, and then he goes up to 212 pounds of all muscle. And to see the difference in the brothers is just insane. And Tito and I used to joke is like, hey, we had the little brothers who decided to go to the dark side and just got gigantic. Because Mark went to the dark side and blew me away in every single lift by a couple 100 pounds. So I was always embarrassed of that. Like in Bigger, Stronger, Faster, it shows me I bench 500 pounds, and in the same meet, Mark benches 633 with a bench shirt. Back in the days when those things were still around. So could somebody like Mike O'Hearn be that strong and be that big without steroids? Yes, I definitely think they could. If you see him at 14 years old, you see he had a great physique right from the get-go. I think Mark is very similar in that. He was always in pretty good shape. We take a look back at Liver King's pictures. He was always in pretty good shape. It's not like he was some big fat guy or really super skinny guy that got in some awesome shape in the middle. Could it be possible that he's natural? Yes. Do I think that he's natural? I don't really waste my time putting in effort into those things anymore because I feel like it's not important. I feel like what's important is like, are you looking at what the guy does every day to be successful? Because I can guarantee you that whether or not they use steroids, that their lifestyle and what they're doing is the key component of all that. So if you look at John Cena and you look at how hard he works every single day, day in, day out, like he's the kind of guy that'll tell you, I've never missed a workout. I can't tell you how many times I've missed a workout. I try not to, but I've missed them. I've had times where like I just don't feel good, so I just don't do them. But you have guys like Cena who just come into the gym day in, day out, ready for war. Does it mean that they're natural? No, not at all. But I have personally decided to stop concerning myself with this because I realize it's a fool's errand. It just drives you crazy, right? I put up a thing on More Plates, More Dates about John Cena. Just, a little bit of information on it. And I can just give you my story on John, and you can decide whether or not you want to believe him or not, right? So I met John when he was 21 years old. I met him at a place called Mass Movement. and Mass Movement is a place where we used to move fitness equipment. So basically, like, we would go into a gym. The gym would be brand new and empty, and we would hold all of the equipment in our warehouse until we got everything. And then on one day, we'd go with moving trucks and we'd move it all in to a gym, and we would set it all up. And so it was a job where, like, John knew the girl that worked in our office. I think they were dating or one of those things at the time, and he came out to visit her. And she kept saying, wait till you meet my friend John. He's just like you guys. And Mark and I, like, we've heard this before. You meet the guy, and he's like a little pipsqueak, pencil neck geek or something. And you're like, whatever, this guy's nothing like me. It's like when you get the old guy, I used to look like you. You're like, no, you didn't. But when Mark and I met John, we were like deer in a headlight. We turned so instantly gay. We were like, oh my God, look at how jacked this guy is. Like, we were like in love with him as friends, right? And just as friends.
Yeah.
But we were like,
that's a good old fashioned bromance.
It was a bromance from like the second we met him.
Yeah.
We're like, oh my God, where did you come from? And like right away, he just felt like he was a Bell brother. He just felt like he was, our long lost ripped brother. And we were all kind of like fat, but we weren't really that fat then. We're actually all in pretty good shape then. But when we met John, we just all clicked. I asked him about steroids one day, and he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, steroids, like, what do you take? And he's like, oh, I don't take anything. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, you got to be on something. He's like, oh, no, I'm dead serious. When I'm 40, I'll get on testosterone. And he's over 40. So the question is now, does he take anything? I don't really know, but I'm going to continue my story. He said that he never took anything. His roommate, I just talked about, his name was Tito Raymond. Tito Raymond was a top-notch bodybuilder. He was also like one of the Muscle Mag top athletes for the company Muscle Tech, which sold Hydroxycut. At the time, it's the biggest company in the world selling fitness supplements, maybe the first company to do $1 billion in supplements. And Tito and John were roommates. So John went out of town, and Tito was like, hey, Boar, John's out of town. I'm going to go through everything he owns. I'm going to find the steroids. We're going to do it. We're going to crack the code. And Tito had a love-hate relationship with Mike O'Hearn. They were always like really good buddies, but Tito always thought like maybe he's not really natural. Tito was always trying to like tell the truth for like the natural guys, like he was always trying. And then I always think that makes him even further suspect, because it's like, why are you so interested in this, bro? Yeah. But I do think Tito was probably natural most of his life, and probably, now I'm sure he's probably on testosterone replacement, but then again, I don't know. But the thing was that Tito went through every single thing that John owned, like everything in the house, went and looked like in his motorcycle and like the little compartment in the motorcycle, like he couldn't find anything. And so he came back to me and he was like really let down and disappointed. And he's like, I didn't find anything. I'm like, you went through everything. He goes, I searched everywhere. We've never this is what's weird. When you're at a gym, you hear people talking about steroids all the time. So if you ask me about other people, for example, I could tell you, oh yeah. Just talk to Big Will. He knows. Big Will, that's where everybody gets their shit from. So like there was a guy at the gym. Everybody got their shit from him. They would know. And all I need to say about John Cena and Mike O'Hearn and even the Liver King, who's our newfound buddy, is if they're doing that much to cover up their use of anabolic steroids, like, good on them. And they've done a really good job of doing it. If they're fooling me, they've really, really fooled me. And if it came out later that I knew that they were actually using steroids, it's like, it's not like I can do anything about it, but I would be kind of bummed out, And so I think a lot of people say about O'Hearn is that he's painted himself in this corner and now he can't get out. And I'm like, okay, well, that still doesn't show me why he's never gotten hurt. It still doesn't show me why he's still so strong. Like, it doesn't really show me anything other than, like, if he does it, he's doing the right thing. So if he is doing it, that's the other thing I want to know is, what is he doing?
It's almost like you're doing the world a disservice to not share your protocol.
Exactly.
Like, what's your protocol? Because you found the sweet spot.
Exactly. And that's the thing that I really want to know. I've told John Cena before, and I've told Mike O'Hearn before, and people like the Liver King need to think about this. It's like, what if we get people to study them, study the outliers? Like, we do these studies, and the studies are always like, let's take this diet versus that diet, and people that are untrained. My studies that I want to do is like, we have a genetic freak here. Let's run all these like tests and studies on them to see if there's ways that we can replicate these genes, or see if there's ways that we can replicate like whatever happened in John Cena's body before it formed. Whatever happened was, it's like some sort of weird magic, right? I mean, you put two people together and you get some sort of magic. His dad's not super jacked. His mom's not super ripped. Like, there's no real combination that you can visually see with your eye, but there's something in those genetics. Mark and I have always had genetics for strength. My first competition I ever went in, I think I benched 350 and I was like 17 years old. By the competition after that, I did 425. So it just shows like, it just shoots up when you're young. You know, like your bench goes way up. And we never knew what we were doing. We didn't have powerlifting magazines. We had one powerlifting magazine called Powerlifting USA. And we had no videos to watch. And if we had videos to watch of like Ed Cohn and Louis Simmons and all these guys that we look up to, how far advanced would we be, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know what? It's funny that I talk about this, and I know I'll probably get a lot of blowback, and people are like, you're crazy. You're the guy that did bigger, stronger, faster. You should think that everybody's on steroids. But I'll also tell you that I went to USC. And when I went to USC, I was friends with pretty much the entire football team.
You're reading my mind.
I worked at the school bar.
How many of these people are in the NFL that are just not in this, you know?
Well, like, so my friends that were at USC that were on the starting teams, I don't think any of them were on steroids that I know of.
Yeah, you're reading my mind. This is exactly...
The second and third string guys, they were going down to Mexico and getting it.
Right.
But the top guys, like my friend Todd Kennelly, one of my best friends in the world, his name's Todd Kennelly. Todd Kennelly was a walk-on at USC. Right? He's about 6'2", about 250 pounds. He was a walk-on. He wasn't big enough, but his older brother, right, Matt Kennelly, was 6'6", 320 pounds. Mm-hmm. Naturally. He's just a naturally big dude. He went and he played like 6 years in NFL, different teams, played for the Giants, played for the 49ers, got some playing time, was good. He was really good. He was also an academic All-American. Mm-hmm. The guy definitely wasn't on steroids. Like, after he got done with school, like, he really wasn't into lifting or anything like that. And he went from like 320 right down to 260 just by simply like not eating so much because he wasn't at the training table every day. Mm-hmm. But he didn't have a clue as to what steroids were. He had no idea.
Right.
I mean, and this is an academic All-American. Mm-hmm. And yeah, people can be faking it or whatever, but like, he didn't have any of the telltale signs either. And his weight loss actually looked really natural. He never looked yoked, even when he was big. When he was 320, mm-hmm. He was like a big corn-fed guy. Mm-hmm. You know, he wasn't like shredded, or he wasn't, you know, whatever. And then I had another friend who unfortunately passed away recently of a heart attack, I believe, at a young age. My friend Mark Maytok. And he was an amazing player. But I know through him that a lot of the guys that were second and third. Mark was a starter, and I don't think he was on anything when he was in college. But I know through him, a lot of guys in the second and third team were actually literally going to Mexico to buy stuff. And I won't name names, but I actually did go to Mexico with a couple guys on the team because I wanted to buy some clenbuterol at the time because I was powerlifting and I needed it for weight loss. And I went down for clenbuterol, and a couple guys on the USC football team bought preloaded Sustanon syringes. And it was funny because the way that they got them across the border was we went into a Burger King bathroom that was in Mexico, and just like they took athletic tape and they taped them all around their legs. So like all up and down their calves, they had like preloaded syringes of Sustanon, like 20 of them on each leg. Wow. And they just walked right across the border with it. No big deal. Yeah. No one said anything. Yeah. Obviously, like, they used it. They never got any playing time. They ended up getting hurt. You know, all these things. So while I think we always like to think the grass is greener on the other side, the juice is juicier on the other side, it's not always the case, you know? There's a lot that goes into an athlete. There's a lot that goes into the perfect movie star, like John Cena. He's a movie star now. He's going to be bigger than The Rock one day, in my opinion. I think, because I think he's a better overall actor. He's going to be huge, right? Steroids would have, and then this is not making an excuse for them if they're not natural, but steroids are not the thing that's making them great. He wakes up every day with a mission to kick some ass and help people and help people's lives be better. So when we want to throw these natty or nots on people and just sort of excuse, like, I think that's the problem that people have, because people do work really hard. Like, regardless of whether or not Mark ever uses steroids, I don't know anybody that works that hard. Like, I just don't, you know? I've never seen anybody do, like, the Liver King hasn't cheated on his diet for 15 years, he said. It's like, I don't know anybody that's like that. You know, like, I cheat on my diet. I know my own faults, and I wish I didn't have them. And I wish that I could live differently sometimes. But then I realized, like, that's what kind of makes me me, you know? So you can't really get rid of all that. So I get rid of as much as I can, and I learn to deal with the faults, and I learn to fill in the gaps, you know, where I need to.
Right.
It's about all I got to say. Do I think that a lot of these guys are on steroids, that are on Instagram influencing you? Yes, I think an awful lot of them are on steroids. I also think it's your job to tell people if you're on stuff or you're not on stuff. If you're promoting a specific diet, a specific program, you're trying to help people, I think you should be honest about it. So with that said, I will be honest about it. I go to Merrick Health, merrickhealth.com, and you guys can too. And this is kind of an interesting organic way to plug this.
I love it.
But I think that getting your blood work done is very important. You can use my code BOAR. We'll put it in the bottom here in the show notes or whatever you call that. And you can use my code BOAR for 10% off. Get your blood checked. Get it looked at by a great doctor who actually specializes in hormones and things for human performance. Because that's important. You can just get your blood work done, but if you get it done through Merrick Health, you're going to get a top-notch analyst looking at your blood work. And then what I think is important, because even if you're only 18 and you're watching this, you should get your blood work done. And you would see what supplements they could recommend you, what things you're not getting in your diet, what things that you can add that are natural. So this isn't just a place that puts you on steroids. It's a place that puts you on a health plan. What I mean by that is that I go to the doctor, they take my blood, they do my blood work, they find out that my testosterone levels were low, and they put me on just enough testosterone to get my levels back to where they were. And I think with all of that, that's the way things are heading in the future. So I think that's the way to go. You go to a doctor, you feel safe about it, you feel good about it, and it's legal. That's merrickhealth.com, and the code is BOAR for 10% off of your labs, and then whatever else you might need over there. We will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.